If you love the sound of explosions and don't mind literally being in a metal death trap, then you might be in luck, as there's a new mech-based first-person shooter coming your way. Hawken, developed by Adhesive Games and published by Meteor Entertainment, is a free-to-play multiplayer game where you pilot giant robotic war machines in the hopes of not becoming scrap metal. The game is currently in an open beta, so keep in mind that everything you see here is subject to change. But let's find out if this game is worth following on your radar or might be best left to burn. Hawken is a dystopian game. Set on the world of Ilaw, the planet has been industrialized until the brink of collapse by a self-replicating nanovirus, also referred to as the Hawken virus. Your job is pretty simple. Take command of a mech and try to be a better pilot than the opposition working for one of the other corporations as you fight over what is left of the planet. The story in Hawken isn't really present, and as a purely multiplayer game, they never really tell you much about your motives or reason why. That is, if you need any other reason than simply blowing up other mechs. Essentially, you randomly join a team, which represents a corporation, and that is about the extent of the lore you'll be absorbing in its current form. That being said, they definitely managed to get that mech pilot feel down, as you're constantly surrounded by one of 3 mech user interfaces that shake and rumble as you walk or get hit. And you'll slowly, bit by bit, see your interface deteriorate and get distorted as you take more hits to the face. When you start a mission, you are greeted by a small startup sequence, and after that, it's go time. There aren't a whole lot of maps yet, and this is something they definitely need to increase, but the maps that are present are quite beautiful to look at and got that dystopia feeling down well as you fire rockets and grenades onto your enemies, which sadly don't actually blow up parts of the map as you're surrounded by ruined cities or barren deserts, knocking over cars and silly light posts that dare stand in your way. As I mentioned, they do a good job at making you feel like a mech pilot with the user interface and trembling movement, but the user interface isn't just there to look pretty. Most of your key statistics, which you'll definitely need to keep an eye on, are represented on actual meters and panels, with only a few showing up on the holographic interface. These are crucial if you want to survive during combat, ranging from simply the health of your mech to the heat you're generating with your weaponry and a fuel meter necessary for much of the movement. The movement, gameplay-wise, is also done really well and strikes a nice balance between the sluggish idea of a giant metal robot stomping around the place and quick, fast-paced action. The key to surviving a skirmish with another enemy mech is very much on well-timed shots, but also dodging. You might be piloting a mech, but the enemy's rockets and grenades likely aren't too impressed by your little metal shield. And as such, you are capable of quickly dashing to the sides, which is absolutely crucial as you'll have to try your best to dodge as much of what the enemy is throwing at you, especially if you're in one of the smaller mechs. They come in 3 general classes, Class A being the smallest and Class C being the biggest. This is, oddly enough, not represented on the actual mech list though, and it certainly wouldn't hurt if it would display more information about every individual mech. Essentially, the biggest ones are, unsurprisingly, the slowest of the lot, but can take much more damage. Every mech comes equipped with a different ability and weaponry, ranging from RPGs to lock-on missile launchers or machine guns. Abilities in turn range from instant weapon cooling capabilities to a simple damage increase or defensive or offensive hunker down modes. Because of this, every mech does feel distinct from one another and caters to a different playstyle. Balance-wise, they still have ways to go, as you always do in games like these, but I didn't find the mech choice of my enemies to hugely impact my own performance. But there are some clear examples of weaponry, such as Hellfire lock-on missiles, not being hugely useful against anyone that knows how to dodge, that do need some changing. But before you do all of this, you of course have to pick your game mode. Hawken doesn't feature a whole lot of them yet, with 2 deathmatch modes, a node control mode, and the latest siege mode, in which you must gather energy in order to launch your own battleship, which then makes its way to the enemy base in an attempt to destroy it. The battleship itself can be destroyed by enemy players by shooting at it themselves, or more efficiently by taking over the anti-air gun in the middle of the map. If you prefer to be a lone wolf player, you can easily drop in and out of these matches, but there is very little chance of survival if you're outnumbered, meaning it is highly important to stick to your teammates. When you do die, whether it is to being outnumbered, or most likely due to the enemy dodging and hitting better, it sadly doesn't tell you a whole lot on what turned you into a pile of bolts. As such, a more elaborate statistic overview when you die would be a nice addition. But if you and your team are successful and victory is at hand, you will gain both Hawken and experience points. Leveling up a mech is quite important as they give you quite a big number of passive and active upgrades as you level up, from new weapons to simple statistic upgrades and points for your skill tree, in which you can earn more statistic upgrades. Luckily, the starter mech you receive, the CRT Recruit, is a very effective mech, and although it may look like a giant microwave or old PC monitor, it is a highly capable machine. Regardless, the level difference can sometimes be a little bitter, as higher level players simply have better statistics, and the matchmaking often pairs you up with all kinds of levels. It is a free-to-play game, which of course means, you guessed it, a microtransaction model. But as far as they go, Hawken seems to do a pretty good job already. The Hawken points earned after each match are one such currency used for upgrades such as new items and internal mech parts. They are quite pricey, and together with the level process it might take a while until you can really stand toe to toe with a level 25, that being the max level. Although if you know what you're doing, you shouldn't have too many issues. With actual money you can buy meteor credits that can be used to, first of all, buy a new mech. Every mech seems to cost the same price at the current moment, and they are reasonably priced, as 5 euros will get you 936 points, and a mech costs 720. Internals and abilities are a bit more pricey, but in general the cost for buying actual items that impact the game seems quite well balanced. In addition, you can also purchase boosts and of course silly and goofy skins and aesthetic items. As if the rather impractical designs of the mechs themselves weren't funny enough. All in all, it seems Adhesive Games knows what it's doing with Hawken. The gameplay is stellar, with a genuine and impressive feeling of piloting a machine made for pure and utter annihilation. The combat is surprisingly fast and requires quite a lot of you, as you need to time your shots and dashes with great precision, all the while paying attention to the status of your mech. Hawken holds quite a lot of promise, and with that being said, my name's been Haas, and if you don't mind, I got a few metal boxes to destroy.